Every actor has got his or her own way, and some actors don't want anything. And some actors refuse anything almost, and some actors want a lot.
When a director and an actor clash creatively on a film, it can be a challenge, but it can arguably lead to a great discovery had the clash not occurred at all. I mean, you got The Empire Strikes Back, Harrison Ford refusing to say George Lucas's hokey written dialogue, "I love you too," and it led to an iconic moment.
I love you.
I know.
George C. Scott refused to play his character in Dr. Strangelove for comedy, but after losing countless chess matches to Kubrick, he gained a respect for the auteur and agreed to go way over the top just for rehearsal purposes. Then Kubrick, and the sneaky little guy, just used those takes anyway.
It's an obvious comic trick, Mr. President. We're wasting valuable time. Look at the big boy. They're getting ready to clobber us.
But what happens when you have a director and an actor paired together who are just creatively different in every way? Well, that's precisely what occurred during the production of the Royal Tenenbaums, when the ever-meticulous, orderly, hands-on Wes Anderson directed Gene Hackman, a no-nonsense, old-school method actor who preferred a more freewheeling approach, not this restrained, pastel, rainbow, symmetrical, whimsical storybook nonsense.
I did tell him, I think you're going to have a good experience, because at a certain point when he was unhappy on the movie, he said, "You promised me I was going to have a good experience." I'm like, well, I thought you would.
A lot has been said about the on-set controversy between the two, but I was always curious exactly what happened and why it happened, and how it affected the creative process on the film and the acting. After pulling from multiple sources, I think I was able to piece together as full a picture as I could. For those who are interested in maybe getting into filmmaking, and you might run into situations like this, the whole ordeal is just a fascinating example of how, even in the worst situations, it's still possible to grit your teeth and get through it and just come out the other side.
Okay, listen, I'm not dying. But I need some time.
What's wrong with you?
Damn.
So let's shag ass and take a deep dive into the drama behind the drama of the Royal Tenenbaums. And as always, I want to give a special thanks to our patrons over on the Back Focus Patreon. Check it out if you'd like to help support this channel.
I don't have a problem with objective reporting. What I have a problem with is some wombat coming on my boat trying to railroad me, you know?
To set the stage, I think it's crucial to put the 2000-era Wes Anderson into perspective. By now, we all know more or less what to expect from a Wes Anderson movie. Visually, you've got bright colors, meticulous set design, there's overhead shots, and lots of symmetry. Tonally, they're whimsical and heightened, like this whole other world separate from reality. As far as the acting goes, there's plenty of dry, sometimes rapid-fire, deadpan delivery.
I knew there was something fishy. We never got the cause of death. She's been murdered. And you think I did it.
Hey!
No one's trying to be funny. They're playing it as straight as possible and letting the comedy of a situation speak for itself. And from a technical perspective, there's a lot of choreography involved with the timing of dialogue and just hitting your marks in the right place, because there's just, as these films have evolved, they just become more complicated with these long tracking shots. The Wes Anderson treatment has become so iconic, it's been parodied countless times, which is ultimately its own form of praise and flattery.
Hey, they've sent us some kind of communique.
Dear homeowner, can we kill you? The murderers.
Dear murderers, no, you may not.
By the time the Royal Tenenbaums was in production, Anderson had already been developing what would become his trademark style, especially when working closely with his actors. His first film, Bottle Rocket, may not have had those storybook aspects he's come to be known for, but he was very specific with the delivery of the dialogue.
Let's move, come on! A bigger one, you idiot! What do you think?
Don't call me an idiot, you punk.
Do you have bigger bags for atlases or dictionaries, sir?
It's worth noting also that he created this very relaxed atmosphere on set. Everybody felt like a family. It was mostly friends of his anyway, and he was in no rush when filming. This allowed a lot of breathing room for multiple takes to get that tone he was looking for.
I paid for the gun. He's out. You're out too. And I don't think I'm in either.
Okay, just calm
No
down.
gang.
You two just don't give a shit.
With Rushmore, Anderson really began to develop that thing, the Wes Anderson thing. As his tone became more specific, so did his directing style with the actors. Every single line of dialogue was written with a great deal of thought and preparation.
Did you invite that kid to your party?
Max Fisher. Come on, Dad, there's gonna be girls there. I'd rather die. Pull your head out of your ass.
In an article for Interview magazine, Bill Murray said that when he read the script, he, quote, figured the writing was so specific that whoever wrote it knew exactly what they were going to shoot. In the same article, Brian Cox said that Anderson, quote, was meticulous about getting the words and pauses exactly as written. The underplayed dialogue delivery was also on full display, and every actor trusted the direction.
Well,
Bill Murray's performance as Dr. Herman Bloom is actually a perfect example. Murray had to resist his natural urges, to ad-lib or play up some of the funnier lines.
so you were in Vietnam, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah?
Were you in the shit?
Yeah, I was in shit.
Also, Rushmore was really the first film in which the timing of the dialogue with camera work became more important. Whereas Bottle Rocket was a little more, loosey-goosey, Rushmore had a more strict, intentional style with plenty of complicated camera movements, and actors not only had to sync their movements to the camera, but their dialogue as well.
Should I go ahead and take care of this tree?
Let's wait a few minutes.
What's going on here, Maxie?
Oh, hey, Coach Beck, good to see you. This is where we're putting in the new aquarium. I'm on charge of the committee, if you can believe it.
Despite Anderson's hands-on approach and getting everything just exactly right.
Come on.
But don't say it doesn't matter. Every line matters.
Get off my back!
Don't my play!
It's not like he's a tyrant. He knows what he wants, he'll shoot until he gets it, but he does it in a polite way. You're right, the end result was this respectful camaraderie with the whole cast who trusted Anderson's vision completely.
You could tell that this guy knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
And you knew exactly what he wanted to make, exactly how he wanted each scene to go. And I've never really seen one that was that precise. I looked at it and I went, this is different. This guy knows exactly what he's doing, and I'll go with it. Anybody that can write that well, I feel confident in.
Overall, after only 2 films, Wes Anderson had established himself as a quiet yet tenacious hands-on filmmaker, someone who needs his actors to hit every little beat he's laid out in order to fully realize whatever world he's creating. And despite the technical gymnastics involved, actors loved working with him. Except for Gene Hackman.
I've always been considered an asshole for about as long as I can remember. That's just my style.
I don't think you're an asshole, Royal. I just think you're kind of a son of a bitch.
Well, I really appreciate that.
Gene Hackman, by all accounts, was a man. And by that I mean he had his fair share of hardships that toughened him up. On his episode of Inside the Actor's Studio, he's pretty candid about how his father abandoned the family quite suddenly when he was 13 years old.
I've read that there was a sort of casual wave goodbye.
Yeah, I was down the street playing with some guys, and he drove by and kind of waved, and
that was it. But you saw him occasionally, presumably, huh? Were you close to your mother?
yeah. Excuse me.
Did life change radically?
It's only been 65 years or so,
Gene lied about his age to join the Marines at 16, but before he would have been shipped off to Korea, he broke both his legs in a motorcycle accident. He joined the Pasadena Playhouse in California to pursue acting, and he was voted alongside his friend Dustin Hoffman as, quote, least likely to succeed. A teacher there told him he would never amount to anything.
I wasn't asked back, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah. Dusty was. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he sucked up and...
Another time when he was knocking around New York working odd jobs, he was a doorman for a Howard Johnson restaurant, and an ex-sergeant from the Marines recognized him and said, Hackman, you're a sorry-looking son of a bitch. But he just used it as fuel. In the biography Gene Hackman, he recalled, quote, after that humiliation, I decided I'd become something other than a sorry-looking son of a bitch. It's no surprise that Hackman grew to despise authority figures.
I have trouble
with direction because I have trouble with authority. I was not a good Marine. I made corporal once and was promptly busted, and I just have always had trouble with authority.
So do you challenge directors a lot?
I do. I shouldn't, but I.
But if it's Billy Friedkin, do you not challenge him?
I think I actually did challenge Billy, and I had no reason to because I hadn't have any track record or anything. But I probably did. I probably don't do it in a way that is constructive.
They're, of course, referring to William Friedkin, who directed Gene in his Oscar-winning performance in The French Connection. Friedkin understood Gene's problem with authority figures and actually used it to his advantage when Gene was showing reservations about playing the darker tones of his character, the gritty, obsessive narcotics cop, Jimmy Popeye Doyle.
Even though I was the youngest guy on the set, I was the authority figure on the set. And so I worked with Hackman in a way that I've never worked with anyone else. I knew I had to get him angry. And so it's really embarrassing. But I would say things to Gene like, we do a shot, and I like one take. I love one take because it's so spontaneous. And Gene wouldn't go the distance. Instead of saying cut, I would say, oh, Jesus Christ. Are you kidding me? I would say, pal, you better get a day job, you know? You better look for something else because this isn't working out. And he actually quit the film on the second day. But I would get his anger to a point where he would finish a take filled with rage and then walk off the set for the rest of the day. And that's exactly what I wanted.
As far as his acting style, Gene grew up in the method acting heyday of the 1960s. He was hanging out with fellow struggling actors, doing read-throughs in their apartments in New York. He was doing it with like Dustin Hoffman and Jon Voight, James Caan, and Robert Duvall. He'd do things like wander around the city and just follow people, studying their mannerisms. He would work tirelessly to create detailed backgrounds for his characters. For him, it was all about immersion, authenticity, and being in the moment in a scene.
You've been in Poughkeepsie, haven't you? I want to hear it! Come on! Yes, I've You've been there, right? Yeah. You sat on the edge of the bed, didn't you? You took off your shoes, put your finger between your toes, and picked your feet, didn't you? That's it! Yes!
As far as how he's worked, directors across the board say that Gene liked to just get it right on the first take if he could. And he didn't mind direction, but judging from this conversation between Clint Eastwood and Wes Anderson, he would get, a little iffy if it seemed like the director didn't know what they wanted.
So he gets annoyed when people are indecisive. And I've watched him with other directors, and he'll get really annoyed.
I'm aware of that.
He also didn't seem to respond well when a director wanted to be specific with action. Bruce Campbell once told a story at the ArcLight Theater about how Sam Raimi directed him in The Quick and the Dead. He had to sort of manipulate him when he gave Hackman some impromptu action on the day, which included, among other things, simply sitting in a chair.
Sam goes, you don't have to. That's all right. But have you noticed that, Gene, all the peasants are standing? You're the king. What does the king do? He sits. So you don't have to sit in the chair, but you'll look just like the peasants if you don't sit. All right.
After years of phenomenal performances and 2 Oscars to his name, Gene had this just huge, amazing filmography under his belt, developed a reputation for being brilliant, but somewhat prickly off camera for a number of reasons. At this time, he had also, several times, given serious thoughts to retiring. So it's no surprise that when Hackman, a military veteran and legendary actor who had delivered countless organic, natural performances working with directors who would more or less stand back with a hands-off approach, a man who was in the twilight of his years with nothing left to prove, was already in an irritable state of mind when he found himself sitting across from a young, patient, detail-oriented, soft-spoken director who had everything to prove.
He told me that he had an idea for a film that he'd like me to be in. And I ask him not to do that, not to write it for me, because I don't particularly like the things that are written for me. I'd rather kind of invent things that are, rather than have to do something with somebody's idea of who they think I am. We had a nice chat, and after I told him not to do it, he went off and did it anyway.
Well, after saying something like that, some directors might have taken Gene's response as a no. But Wes Anderson, he's a patient guy, and he pretty much nagged Gene to do it for months.
I'm not even sure how this occurred, but I do think I sort of forced him to do it. Yeah, over a long period of time. I mean, it was really a year and a half, and, I just wore him down.
Another hurdle was the salary. Anderson had already established with his first two films that his ensemble casts would all be paid the same union scale amount for their roles. Quote, Gene was very annoyed about the money. He was furious. When we were reading through the script, my partner Kenny told me that the Wes Anderson voice was getting annoying, so...
Don't do the voice.
That's the only time I'll do it. And so, Gene Hackman, already irritated to be playing a part he initially didn't want to play, in a movie he didn't want to be a part of, being paid a salary he didn't like, found himself alongside Wes and fellow castmate Kumar Pallana in Battery Park in Manhattan. It was the first day of shooting, and Hackman managed to find another thing that bothered him.
Kumar was blocking the Statue of Liberty. Our Gene said to me, it's great, you got the Statue of Liberty here. I said, well, Kumar's going to stand in front of it so you don't see it. And he said, that's stupid. That was the foot we started on.
This is an example of what ended up being one of Gene's primary frustrations, not understanding the tone or style of the film.
There is a certain look to the film, and I prefer not to let that affect me. I make certain choices. If I let the fact that I wear colorful shirts and colorful ties and clothes that fit me in a strange way, if I let that affect my performance, I would be doing maybe a caricature of his idea of what that is, as opposed to just allowing this to be a look.
He worked hard to give as natural a performance as possible, but he was irked whenever Wes told him to perform something specific in the script.
He always knew his lines exactly. He's very prepared, but sometimes he didn't know certain actions, and there was at one point I said, after a few takes, I said, it says you're supposed to cry. And he's where is that? And then I looked at his script, and everything is crossed out except his dialogue. That he has his script prepared that way. He really doesn't want to read that. I think his reason is he wants the text, he needs to know what he's got to say, but beyond that he wants to make it completely spontaneous and to feel like he's making this up in the moment. And more than anybody else I've ever worked with, he does that. And when you're standing on the set, it's sometimes very surprising to see him sort of just, burst into the scene.
Honestly, from an acting perspective, that's not a crazy thing to do, especially if a script is dictating, your emotional state. It's a volatile thing. You don't know what you're going to be doing in a scene. For example, Jessica Chastain, when she got the script for Interstellar, she crossed out similar things. She crossed out the exact same thing in her script, crying, for the scene in which she records a message for her father in Interstellar.
But then also I cross out sometimes directions so I feel free that I can do whatever I want. Like I crossed out starts crying. I just want to see what's going to happen in the moment.
As far as Anderson's signature, meticulous blocking and timing of dialogue, Gene seemed to have a love-hate relationship with it. On one hand, Wes has said that Gene enjoyed the challenge. In an interview for Far Out magazine, Wes said he did like a complicated shot. He liked the idea of doing a scene where you do something here and then you have to run around the back of something and appear somewhere else, like theater. On the other hand, this specific choreography meant more takes than usual. Not a crazy amount, but if every actor on set was just a seasoned professional, it might have gone smoother. Well, Gene frequently shared the screen with the previously mentioned Kumar Pallana, who, despite being a literal plate spinner, had trouble spinning multiple metaphorical plates when he was on screen.
You son of a bitch! That's the last time you put a knife at me. Hear me?
Fellow cast member Seymour Castle recounts one frustrating day of shooting between Gene and Kumar.
Kumar's holding the bags, and you hear off camera Wes saying, "Set down the bags, Kumar." And Kumar drops the bags, and Gene goes, "Get the and he jumps, because Wes is so specific, and it's all.
And in an interview for the Associated Press, Bill Murray goes into detail about another frustrating scene with an unnamed actor.
I watched him once do like 25 takes where he did it perfectly with an actor who kept blowing it every single time. Big long camera move, panning, all this stuff. Gene would do it perfectly. The other actor would blow it, and I go like, oh God. I was watching it going, no wonder this guy wants to throttle people. And then he sort of gave just a sort of an ordinary performance, and the other actor got it right, and I thought Gene was going to throw the guy off the ledge of the building. But
this isn't confirmed, but it's possible that the actor was Luke Wilson. There's a long tracking shot with him and Gene had a lot of scenes with him. I don't know. At a 10th anniversary screening of the film, Murray said, quote, "He had to work with Luke, who was dizzy in love and couldn't think straight." Murray's actually one of the best go-to sources to comment on all this. Sure, he's joked around about his behavior.
No, I'll stick up for Gene, too. The word sucker gets thrown around all the time.
But he also brought up a good point during an interview on Drew Barrymore's talk show about how he was put in a lot of difficult situations, just from a technical perspective.
he was a little irritable, but he had to work with children, dogs, Kumar, who was like an absolute mystery to all of us anyway. You know, they put him in very challenging positions to work, and so he just felt a lot of responsibility and kept thinking, what am I doing here with these people?
Murray was like a neutral party. Although he understood and sympathized with Hackman's frustrations, he was also a good friend of Anderson at this point, and could see that Hackman didn't understand him, just thought he was just some punk kid.
Older, great actors do not give young directors much of a chance. They're really rough on them, and Gene was really rough on Wes, and I used to kind of step in there and just, you know, try to defend my friend.
Murray did his best to bring down the temperature, but things did get heated. Gene reportedly called Wes a cunt, telling him, "Pull your pants up and act like a man." Boy, that is... What's your response to that? You can't say anything back to that. That's the best, most effective insult I've ever heard. But why the ire? It could be argued that Gene saw Anderson's style as frivolous, something that was unnecessary and time-wasting. Going back to this conversation between Anderson and Clint Eastwood, Eastwood offered some unique insight.
He loves to give his best, but he doesn't mind correction if you get going. And you get going and say, no, I see it a little bit different. He'll go for that, but he doesn't like to have you experimenting on his
dabbling
time. Yeah.
in it.
I want to continue this conversation.
Sorry.
This seems kind of paradoxical, though. You know, Wes Anderson, he's not the type to experiment a lot. He's planned everything out from the start. You look at the behind the scenes of the Royal Tenenbaums, he's looking at all the drawings. Oh, look, this color this in here. This is what his hair should look like. Oh, look at this rug. Oh, this is nice.
That's going to be great, right?
It is great, yeah.
Have this be dark, then have white labels nearly as deep as high as this, with playwrights in alphabetical order. I gave Carl the list.
One would think that Anderson's confidence in knowing exactly what he wants would be right up Gene's alley. But if Gene didn't understand the vision, you know, it's tough to walk onto set every day not being on the same wavelength.
Come on, let's shag ass.
According to Wes, after it was all over, Gene did a classic French exit and left without a word to anyone. A sour note. But then it's very telling that, according to Bill Murray, Gene showed up to the premiere.
Do you think he came around and saw the film and that final product or end result?
Yeah, he was not an ignorant man. He was a bright guy, and when he saw the movie, he had to go, well, I acted like a jerk, you know. I'm sure he did, because when you see the movie, it's a real piece of work, you know. Wes Anderson makes great movies, and so does Gene Hackman, and
You put them both in the same movie, what are you going to get? You're going to get a good movie. So.
It's one of my favorite films
it's
ever
good.
made.
Yeah. So, goodbye, Gene. I hope you're well, wherever you are.
That speaks volumes, and it pretty much confirms that Gene just had a disconnect with Anderson's vision. According to an interview for The Times, Anderson recalled Gene telling him that he liked the film. Quote, "But he told me he didn't understand it when we were shooting. I wish I'd shown him 10 minutes early on. Then maybe he would have said, okay, I get it. Do a little pan there, and you open the book, and there's the chapters, and then you got okay, I'm starting to get it, yeah.
What characters? There's a bunch of little kids dressed up in animal costumes.
Good night, everyone.
Don't be mad at me. That's just one man's opinion.
And, the troubles that Gene had probably added to his character, who's supposed to be this cantankerous, disagreeable guy that nobody likes.
If you think you can want to talk some jive? I'll talk some jive like you never heard. Oh, yeah? Right on! Sit down.
The thing is, the cast of the film really did like him, and they were ultimately able to be mature adults and look past all of the complaining and the insults, like this gruff exterior, and see something in him. They genuinely enjoyed working with him.
But I just want to say the last 6 days have been the best 6 days of probably my whole life.
Immediately after making this statement, Royal realized that it was true.
At the 10th anniversary screening, Gwyneth Paltrow said, quote, "He was kind of a bear of a guy, but I also found something very sweet and sad in there. I liked him a lot. It's like, you're Gene Hackman. You can be in a bad mood if you want to. You're Gene Hackman." I think my favorite anecdote from the actors involved came from Ben Stiller in a guest essay for the New York Times. He released it shortly after Gene Hackman's passing earlier this year. He described being so nervous around Gene, and finally working up the courage to tell him in great detail how much he loved his performance in the Poseidon Adventure.
There's nobody alive but us. And nobody's going to help us except ourselves. It's up to each one of you. It's up to all of us, together.
After timidly pouring his heart out to this man, Gene smiled and replied, "Money job." Then they went to shoot a scene in which Gene comforts Ben. From the article, quote, "My character opened up to him about having a difficult year, and he put his hand on my neck, and he looked at me, his eyes inches from mine, with a deep honesty and empathy, the powerful kind of look I had seen him give on screen many times."
I've had a rough year, Dad.
I know you have, Chazzy.
Ben goes on to say, quote, "In the film, Gene Hackman's performance doesn't ask you to like him. He plays each scene simply and truthfully and with full commitment, but always with a sensitivity and humanity underneath it all, just like in the Poseidon Adventure. I don't think it was a money job, but I never asked."